Now I want to deal with the most important position of endgame theory from a practical point of view. It is one of the main reasons why the endgame rook and pawn versus rook has such a drawing tendency as the defending king is reasonably placed. And in some way it also has to do with the general drawing tendency of rook endgames, of course. You should know it by heart, as it can be applied with bishop's pawn, like in this example, or with knight's pawn or a central pawn, or of course also with rook's pawn. Well, the winning chances with the rook's pawn are, of course, even worse than with the other pawns, of course. Black to move can establish Philidor's drawing mechanism, which you should know. Black must play rook b6 to cut off white's king on the 6th rank. White has no real shield from the checks, and usually transitions to pawn endgames are all drawn. For instance, rook h7 king here, and the pawn endgame, of course, is completely drawn, as in this position you retreat to, remember from the first DVD, of course you retreat to f8. So this is no real winning try, and the only other way to make progress would be to advance the f-pawn, but then white's king, or if you just wait, if you mark time, then black also just waits. And the only other way to make progress would be f6 to use the f-pawn as shield, but now white's king has no protection against the checks from behind, so rook b1, and white's king has no shelter, and again this pawn endgame would be completely drawn off course, and again you retreat to f8. And in this case there is simply no shelter from the checks. Okay, with white to move, on the other hand, this given position would be won as it is a bishop's pawn, and white can encircle black and must start with king g6. Of course, king f6 would be a stupid blunder, forcing black to establish Philidor's defensive set up, and no fourth of the world can break this. And after f6 you play, you remember? Of course. White's king has no shield. This is the main point of Philidor's defensive mechanism. Instead of king g6, f6 would also be a big mistake. Again, black draws easily as there's no shelter. So the only real chance, you can also find this by this method of exclusion, but you could of course also find it by searching for checks for the king, shelters for the king from checks. Now black's king cannot leave the 8th rank, black's rook cannot leave the 8th rank, as after rook b1 the f-pawn would queen. Check, 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 and the f-pawn would cost black's rook, as white's king would just approach the, would just approach the checking rook, and then the rook would be forced to sacrifice itself. So black's rook cannot leave the 8th rank, and this passive defense leaves this with a bishop's or central pawn. It only works with a knight's or a rook's pawn, as we'll see in one of the next clips. Okay, so king g6, and invading passively loses, f6. Now black must stay passive forever, and this is usually a very bad sign in rook endgames. Activity is of paramount importance in rook endgames. Sometimes it is even possible to sacrifice a pawn to activate the rook or a king. We will see several examples of this on this DVD. Okay, and now rook is g7 check. The immediate rook h7, the immediate try to encircle would not be precise due to the strong defensive counter rook c6, threatening to take on f6. And now white must go back, forcing black again into the passive position, and then white would win, as I will show you now. Check, king h8, just check, check, encircling and winning the rook. And king f8, then rook h7, and again winning by the same method. You should know Philidor's defensive setup, which arises, for example, here by heart. Remember this setup, play it against Fritz or friends at the chess club, and really remember it will be worth it. It is the most important single position of endgame theory from a practical point of view, and it's not so difficult to remember. If you once have stored it inside your memory, you will never forget it for your whole life.